Ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and ladies, there was my massive face. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get rid of this beard because it is driving me crazy. So, oh, jeez, sorry about that. What the hell happened there? Sorry, my phone just had a bit of a heart attack. Excuse me for a moment while I kiss the sky. Oh, jeez. I got to get better at these broadcastings. I can use the Islamic artwork that I got. It's a naked woman in chains. There you go. You're being held up by the naked woman chained up. It was made by an Italian artist used to symbolize what Islam was doing to women. A bit extreme, but still art. I love art. So as I'm talking to you, I'm actually pedaling. And I'm just picking a random, how appropriate. Yeah, Western civilization being propped up. So I found these glasses as well. I always find glasses around because I'm really, as you guys know, I lose everything all the time because of my lack of short-term memory. So I've lost my whole pencil case, and I had like all these beautiful erasable pens and calligraphy pens. I lost the whole thing. I don't know where it went. Lose my wallets, lose stuff. So I don't buy glasses because it will cost me a fortune. So when I find them, I keep them, and then I'll lose them. Someone else will find them. Woman in chains, yeah. How ironic. All right, I just picked a random chapter. So this chapter in the book, remember, thank you very much. It's $50 Australian, which is 36 roughly American. And put in your mailing address. I think, John, I can't see your mailing address in there. I'm sure you've put it somewhere and I can't see it. Everyone else somehow put it in a way that's visible. So this chapter is called Old David. And some of this won't make sense because I've just picked a random chapter. Somewhere about 40% of the way in the book. Alrighty. Old David is the chapter, and here is some astronomy, which we'll do later. Excuse me, I'm getting a bit sidetracked. Excuse me for a minute. I just had to pull out some chewing gum, which is really disgusting. Now, I want to know what you guys think of this. This is an upgrade to the broadcast. You ready? Welcome everybody to the broadcast of something, and I just lost where I was in the book, and now I have to open it again. Are you ready? Let's go. All right. Welcome everyone to Speaking Human. I am your host, GabSmacked. High energy. Yeah, that's right. Not like Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush wishes, man. All right, I completely missed I've lost where I was with the Old David chapter, so now I don't know if I'm going to read you that. Autistic programming. Ugh. All right, my broadcast is the worst broadcast in history. All right, let's do it. You ready? We have 24 people, 25 people. We're going to go. Old David. What have I done? Where's the volume? Okay, Old David. Let's go. With Jonathan on his way to being a school captain. This music's distracting me. A new chance for a friend came when David's time at Northeast was to begin. The guy that stuck with me in primary school was here to save my life. He would prove to them all that I was a good guy. It was the fifth day when he called me at home to say he could no longer be my friend in public, as his new friends did not like me. Horrified and needing more than anything to be ripped away from this body, it was time to transfer this pain to others. A show once had an audience laugh where a handshake zapped a man and I was sure that if I replicated this with thumbtacks attached to my hands when shaking the hands of others, there would be newfound laughter and friends to follow. Unfortunately, the pain did not leave, but created only more in others. Now, the book is a bit hard to read there because what I did was I shook people's hands with thumbtacks thinking it would make them laugh, but it actually caused the hands to bleed and it made them hate me. So, what pain? You will have to see some of my other scopes. I'm very sorry, Play Dead 79. You're probably around 38 years old, are you? Lovely to meet you. Yeah, I'm reading partway through the book. So I'll refer you to Autism on YouTube, on my GabSmacked channel, Autism First Live Speech, and you'll see what pain I'm talking about. The school was a place to move from group to group, mimicking the characteristics of the kids within each one, recording how many days it would take before I was shoved aside. There was much to learn, with a glimmer of hope that I would ultimately prevail, as nights and weekends would see rage pumping through me on the most beautiful of days, leaving me to scream muffled obscenities into pillows. So that's how that chapter begins. So to explain that, we've got 41 people here. So to explain, David was one of my friends from preschool, the one of the few who stuck by me despite my obvious weirdness and inability to speak and make eye contact. But when he finally came to my high school, where I had then been abused for about 4 years by both teachers and students, he also succumbed to peer pressure and was unable to continue being friends with me in public. But at least after 5 days, he had the decency to call me up at home and tell me. So you got to give them some credit, right? My grandfather, whom I had only recently discovered, was a retired anti-Islamic extremist, terror operative in the forever diminishing Western civilization of the motherland, was now dying from the effects of smoking since age 12. My own father's cooking was missed when he went back to the mountains to look after his dying father, surrounded by maturing grapes beneath the alpine sun by day and the numinous Milky Way by night. The death of this assassin who shared my name, my blood, and had gathered both Muslim and Christian families together at his funeral, brought the monster within me to even faster maturity, pushing boundaries of classroom behavior with much further than I would ever dare to do alone. The kids progressed into dreams as their abuse had mutated into a much more malignant form. From where nothing was direct, but the disease that was young Jamil, my name is Jamil in the book, for them still existed, for them to avoid under pain of death. Pranks were now anonymous, leaving my 15-year-old self not knowing which face was the enemy. A volcanic eruption of rage after weeks of pranks from hidden terrorists had me then walk through the playground, punching anyone I saw. Jamil remained a child, whilst it was the monster that grew into his body that was now attracting the attention of females without his knowledge. It took only 8 months of bullying by the next verminous student for the monster to be released again. He was in the grade below, a lot smaller in stature and with vile comments being spat forth from him whenever we crossed paths. The Eddie-fueled monster, Eddie is the guy that bashed me when I was 10 and he was 16, and he traumatized me to the point where I took it out on every other bully, so I had to explain that part. Obviously, when you read the book, you'll see that happen. The Eddie-fueled monster living within me would have most likely waited for 2 years to pass as it did with Peter Barry. Peter Barry was the first bully I took down. I waited 2 years to bash him. But the bully made the mistake one day of kicking me. It was not me that ran after him, but the 15-year-old recently selected as a state sprinter, the monster that begged to take care of me when I refused. Once the legs beneath me that even final year students would now comment on during soccer matches ran after him, I knew the rage had taken over. Seeing the bully run from the beast was compelling, and I could not look away as his left hand wrapped itself around the bully's neck in an instant, with his right hand now a jackhammer, destroying the bully's face and chest over and over for each day, for each week that he enjoyed tormenting the young Jamil the way that Barry and Eddie had done before him. The monster could see nothing but the memories of him spitting on Jamil, swearing at Jamil, vomiting forth inhumane remarks, and laughing at him with his audience of peers. The bully could no longer stand on his own, but the beast continued to hold him in view of its right hand for further punishment until I tore myself away. from my compulsion to keep watching past his immobilized friends and around the entire high school playground. I saw my peers playing, talking, eating and laughing, whilst feeling nothing other than liberation. An eternity passed when I completed the trip and saw the former bully still lying on the ground, still with his friends frozen. His 8 months of terror had almost come to an end. And with one final outburst of rage, the beast landed the top of his powerful right foot into the soft meat of the bully's body. The beast had become my enemy. He betrayed me and had become what I had feared all my young life. He had to let me hug the former bully, now a younger student with his own group of friends who would never make eye contact with me again. And now I lived in fear of me, with nothing left but disgust with what I had become. Now almost 6'2" and 175 pounds, I had to keep this creature away from people. And so from that day on, I confined myself to a piano at the music center, the library, or a toilet cubicle. That's the end of the chapter. The next chapter is called Eddie's Return. I won't tell you about that now. So there you go. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It took a long time. I fell asleep listening to Christopher and Peter Hitchens on YouTube for a year before my brain was able to adapt into writing in that way. You are amazed? You're amazed already. It's only one chapter. I told you, people get blown away from the book. Very precisely phrased. Thank you. It took me a long time. There's one more that I want to read to you guys. I'm going to skip Eddie's Return. Eddie's Return is more disaster. Autistic programming. Seriously, your writing is incredible. Thank you. That is awesome. Well, it comes from within me. And like I said, I couldn't write like this. But I told you that my ability to memorize things, and that's how I became funny. That's how I learned accents. There's one part of my brain that can hear things like a computer and then spit it back out. And that's what I did with authors, right? So I just copied them. It puts you in the moment, yeah. Some of it's hard to write. So, yeah, there's some more violence. There's violence in the church where my priest held me back. The formal, more violence. All right, now we flash back to the future. All right, we flash back to the future halfway through the book. So the future here is 2013. And this is now the older Jamil, which is basically almost me. Hard to hear, known you were a child. Yeah. Knowing, yeah. Yeah, my mother didn't know any of this because she was an unbelievably successful businesswoman. You know, she's basically the female Trump, if you want. But she didn't really know much about my life because I didn't see her much, and I read these parts to her, and she's not emotional, but she did not handle it very well. So that's how. Anyway, so this is now part 2 of the book. So the book, someday you're going to be narrating this book on tape. The beast was like the big vengeful brother. It was, and then the brother betrayed me. It's like in movies when you have someone you look up to turn violent, and you follow them temporarily, but you know it's not you. That's right. Yeah, that's nothing. You haven't. There's way more violence in the book than that. And yeah, I'm so glad. And you know what? It's you guys, because the publisher wanted to take all that out. And I was like to them, mate, you're fucking kidding me. You can't take that shit out. That disgust in myself is what we all see. That is proof that as humans, we have evil and good within our own hearts. You were fighting for your life. That's right. And part of the reason that I did the ultimate suicide was because I was killing the beast. That's the real part. Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, so I won't read to you part two. There's a lot of it that what you'll find interesting is you see you guys identify a lot with that story. Don't they know what makes for good drama? No, that's what makes it your work. That's what I said. I thought I was nuts, but you guys agree. That's exactly what I was saying. Like, well, how can you take this shit out, man? And that was the biggest publisher in the Southern Hemisphere. They're called Random House. And it would have been like, I don't know, like the biggest publisher. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that's the point. The point is, as you guys know, I don't give a shit about that, man. What matters is how many lives we change. What's the point in me getting $1 million if 10 other people die because they didn't hear the true story? That's exactly right, yeah. And that's why I said, and you know what my best friend said to me? So, my heart is beating so fast, your writing puts it right back in the moment. I am honored that you would say that. Honestly, I am honored. It is a massive honor. What did they claim was their reason for cutting some parts? The reason was that the author said, you don't think you're a better author than I am, do you? That was her response when I tried to talk with her. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, well, I think we all know the answer to her question, right? All right, the next part of so the book is split into two parts. The first part is in Australia with flashbacks to Lebanon and terrorist attacks. Oh, they want to cut. That was her response. When I asked the author, why do you want to cut these parts out? She said, do you think you're a better author than me? Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, so the real author of the book is the girl that I'm rescuing from her mother. So I think I've told you guys before that there was a girl that worked for me. And as my company started to collapse, I used my contacts to help her get out of her house because her mother was a violent person. And I was using as you guys know, my Sherlock Holmes ability to discover everything about her and the mother and the father. And I figured out the father where he lived. And, you know, I call it weaponized autism. You guys call it Sherlock Holmes. So I use my weaponized autism, and you see in the book from her perspective how this giant freak, Jamil, was able to discover all these things about her. Anyway, so then she narrates the second part of the book, and then, as you know, I won't bore you with that. So what happened on the night of my high school prom? So it's even got the teenage shit in it, because I've got the high school prom, and I played piano, and I had a standing ovation for my piano playing, and I made a song that I played for everyone. And my girlfriend at the prom dumped me at 9 o'clock when the entree came through. And she then told me that she liked some other guy at the prom. So that was my high school prom, as you guys call it. So after that, I was devastated. It was the first time I ever drank alcohol. And then I collapsed, and it's an interesting story because I confused the floor with the wall and lots of things. So the end of that chapter was this. I will tell you what the end was. 10 days to go. 10 days to go. While I am now moving to Lebanon, right? And why I'm moving and all that, you'll see once you read the whole book. So there's a lot of gaps. But 10 days to go until the flight. I sat against a wall upstairs. This is after I got dumped at my prom by Hoshana, who's now married, by the way. And she's a very nice lady. I have nothing against her. 10 days to go while I sat against a wall upstairs and looking out the window without moving, counting the amount of times the trees would sway in the wind with each passing hour. From seemingly nowhere on the 7th day, John's older sister Jenny, these are cousins, called for me. And Jenny says, "You're leaving in a few days. You have your whole life ahead of you. Get over it and move on." I thought, you're right. And so I did. And that's the end of part 1. Part 2 flashes back to the future, and then we jump back into 1998. So part 2 begins with 1998, and it's called Freedom. And this is the last part I'll read to you for today. It felt like being on the other side of suicide when boarding the Gulf Air flight for the Near East. The pain of my existence did not enter the plane, and it slowly faded from view as we climbed higher and higher, away from the wrong country, and into an afternoon that took a great time to fade into the night. I got along very well with the 4-year-old Somali boy during the first leg of the flight. He understood my limited Levantine Arabic, and I thought I understood his African Arabic in return, until he asked me if I was a halal Muslim. 4 years old. I had been officially studying the Quran and the Arabic script for a few months during free classes, and was absorbed in the ideology that had been kept so separate, but so close for so many centuries. What Maronites around the world had grown up to believe were pockets of Islamic no-go zones in a Western country, were trying to be seen by Jamil as an Arabic culture native to Lebanon itself. A heretical thought to the Maronites of old. After counting whatever I could on that plane ride, I turned to the unending sand below us, roll out for what seemed like hours, fixating on the road which sliced open the earth below like a knife, exposing the darkness of Arabia beneath the hot sand. While thinking this, the road became slightly blurry. I blinked, thinking I had maybe become even more blind, until it became clear again, followed by more blur. They were clouds, interrupting my view of the road below until my view was washed out, throwing me back into my seat from the sheer brightness of the white world. But I didn't need to adjust for long. Within moments, the sea of white was defeated by a sea of shimmering blue, the Mediterranean Sea. Never had I seen such an achingly beautiful scene in my short life. As though Botany Bay and the Blue Mountains had collided, leaving Sydney squashed on a 45-degree angle. High rises surrounded by blue seas on one side and majestic green mountains on the other. Getting larger and larger until the shudder of high-speed winds engulfed our cabin as our jet touched down between the shimmering blue on one side and the green giants on the other. The herd of passengers cheered around me as though it were New Year's Day. I had arrived. They are going to see me all grown up for the first time, I was telling myself. They will see how much I've changed, and I'm sure they will love what I have become. Pushing my luggage on the trolley towards the closed doors that would soon open for me onto a crowd of luggage and a crowd of family members, I took in a deep breath. The doors opened out to an ocean of foreigners and I heard cheering. Gradually the crowd began to dissipate with the now very familiar rate of exponential decrease that had become so synonymous with human nature to my young mind, leaving me almost completely alone to trample back and forth over the marble floors while hearing regular announcements in both French and Arabic over the PA system. None of that was cheering for Jamil. None of his family appeared to be anywhere to be found. Shit, the editors made a mistake in the grammar, the dickheads. Perhaps at the wrong airport, I spent 2.5 hours traveling between the taxi stand, the public phone, and the men's room. Do I take a taxi? But where do I go? And with what money? Having not yet paid for anything other than lollies, milk, and newspapers. I asked what turned out to be a non-native cleaner if she knew how to get to my uncle's place. After describing his glasses and facial features, she shook her head and kept walking. I could use the public phone, but there was nowhere to place any money, and I did not know anyone's phone number. Stinking and sweating, I began to prepare a place to sleep for the night at the airport. 2.5 hours later, I was the object of attention for a mass of family members who ordered me to embrace them. Uncle Randy was shocked. Kiss them. What are you waiting for? What I didn't say was, I waited 2.5 hours, bitch. I didn't say that. Still lacking the ability to articulate these thoughts, I put out my hand to shake each of theirs, having no idea how much this would offend them. I think my family was speaking to me when we were in one of the procession of cars owned by a Levant family member. But I focused on the picture before me, a vast sea to the left, and mountains which rose into the clouds immediately to my right. A gigantic statue of Jesus, a symbol of a once Christian country, stood at the base of one of the steep green paths to the clouds. Disorientating to see a city built on such an angle, I remained unable to look away despite it making me nauseous. After a while on this solid 8-lane highway, which I would one day get to speed on, which you can see on Facebook, on Sports Cars and Motorbikes Australia. It's called Beirut 250. The land around me rotated as we exited off the former runway and began climbing into the sky. Within minutes, I could see the coastal city of Baytran and its bay beneath us, as though I was back on the plane. The temperature dropped and the air became cooler, sharper and crisp. Buildings were replaced with centuries-old stone houses. Centuries-old stone houses then turned into fields of fruits, vegetables, goats, cows, and elderly widows I was sure grew up with the horse and carriage throughout their younger days. Dad's hometown welcomed me. Dad's hometown welcomed me with an ear-piercing quiet, allowing hundreds of memories to punch the inside of my skull as loud as ever. The night brought on a Mediterranean buzz that had teenage me in an erratic state, that ran free with no parents or teachers to condemn it. The entire suburb was as though a gigantic cafe. Flocks of people were out socializing, with my body overwhelmed with adrenaline that wanted to tear through my skin. The stone wheel that Dad had used before the horse took over was on its side where it had been since before the 6-year-old Jamil witnessed, in the midst of flying bullets, his dad and granddad pick up the man who had been shot in the neck as he died in their arms. That solid stone wheel was well taller than a human, bigger than a small truck, and wider than a fridge, meaning that Dad must have really had strength at that age that I could not comprehend. "You've only just got here," people would say as I walked through their homes, from its front to the back, whilst sucking in as much data as I could, where placed objects were, and what seemed to be used with greater frequency, what age groups were inside versus the age groups outside, who was whom and why that mattered to me. I assured them I'd be back. This hyped up almost 18-year-old did not calm down as the night aged into twilight. He needed to capture all he could with his camera to share with the world so far away what it was missing. Families were not shy from physical affection, which I was not used to witnessing and did not like to think about. And there's a few more lines and I'll stop. The cousin who once showed me off as the hot 18-year-old, this was back when I was 12, I looked 18, was now more subdued, and I was almost 18. Hoping to share this with her, I burst out with the closest rehearsed line that seemed appropriate. "Hi, Rachel," I called out. "You don't have the fire in your bum like you used to." "What do you mean?" she queried. I didn't mean a physical fire burning inside her lower body. It was a metaphor, which went against my nature to use, but I believed was the way humans communicated. Perhaps I was wrong. This seemed to terribly upset Rachel. But I calculated that I had at least 15 more cousins I could try and generate a relationship. 15 more shots of trial and error. Those odds seemed pretty good at the time. And a couple of more lines and then we're done. To practice social techniques before losing additional cousins. It was time to try again with a group of guys and girls having a chat. Hi, how are you? I said, extending my hand to someone in the group. So far it was going well. With no idea what to do next, I quickly scanned my stored database of movie lines, then launched my conversation starter to the guy speaking within the group at the time. My name is Jamil, and I heard you eat shit. It was now time to pay an even higher price for being judged simply as not so nice neurotypical, as opposed to an autist. In summary, the guy was pissed. Give him a break, one of the girls said. He's from Australia. That's probably how they speak over there. It would be a good idea to let them keep thinking that. Look, I've embarrassed myself, I said, realizing that I must have made a mistake. That's enough punishment. Let's move on. He never did. All right, so that's all I'm going to read for now. Thank you very much for joining. Anyone have any? There's a lot to unpack. Like, you can read that book multiple times and you'll see different morals that you take out of that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being enthralled. It is, isn't it? That's exactly what that's the thing. I'm a mathematician, and all 5 people that have read it went obsessed about it. That's 5 out of 5. That is not an accident. And that's when I thought, thank you. Wow. Okay. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but thank you. Thank you very much. Really, thank you. Really, thank you. Because it's because of you guys that it's going to get out there. It's great to hear you read it. Thank you. Sorry, I got a bit emotional. I don't think I've teared up in years. Yeah, I really miss Lebanon. Been here in exile for too long. Anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and that's all I'm gonna have. I love hearing your life's point of view. Why, thank you. It added to the yeah. So what I forgot to tell you, which I was trying to tell you on the last scope, which was the publisher called me up and she said to me, Liran knows about that. So the publisher calls me up and she says, Liran's an amazing painter, by the way, if you go look at his links. I've done one of them on my Twitter. I've posted that out, quite beautiful. The publisher called me up and she said, my job is to figure out the marketing of your book. It was the marketing section. And she said, I always read the blurbs of the book. She said, but after I saw the blurb of her book, I had to read it. She said, I couldn't put it down. And she says, I get hundreds of books a day. And she said, I could not put yours down. And this is the publisher in the head of the marketing division of the publishing firm. Yeah. And so she said to me, you have to get this out. And so she hooked me up with an interview, with 2 interviews, and they're both American. They're both American people, and they're both like huge, I forget their names, but they're like huge radio guys in the US. So she's hooked me up with those interviews, and they're waiting to go as soon as I get the book out. She offered me 2 tickets to go to Hollywood. She sent the script to some of her friends at Hollywood. She's hooked me up with a book signing in Hong Kong. Problem is, the government has my passport, so I can't go to Hong Kong and do the book signing. So maybe I'll have to send one of you guys go do the book signing. Anyway, so that's the story. Anyway, I'm going to go because we're decreasing, and we can talk in the inner circle. I'll go into the inner circle now, and the GoFundMe and Patreon, we'll talk together, and we can discuss what your thoughts are. Oh, I'm getting a call.